Hi, welcome to Wharton Tech Talks. I'm Steph, your host for today. And today we have on our show Camille Van Horne. Camille is the director of product at Instacart, the leading grocery technology company in North America that partners with more than 1,400 national, regional, and local retail banners to facilitate online shopping and delivery and pickup services from more than 80,000 stores across North America on the Instacart marketplace. With an MBA from Stanford's Graduate School of Business, Camille leads product management at Instacart and is passionate about building consumer products that improve people's lives. Hey, Camille, where are you calling in from?
Hey, Steph, good to see you. I'm calling in from New York City.
Awesome. To start off, can you tell us a little bit about what you do at Instacart?
Of course, I've been at Instacart for about 5 years, and I actually joined Instacart right out of my MBA program as a senior product manager. At the time, I was overseeing the in-store flow. So just for folks who aren't as familiar with Instacart, we make it possible for people to get the groceries they need from retailers that they love by having shoppers pick, pack, and deliver their orders. When I first started, I was overseeing the shopper flows from the point of time a shopper enters the store to the point of exit. So that's the in-store universe. And over my tenure at Instacart, I was able to grow into a manager and oversee the end-to-end fulfillment flows from the point that the shopper enters the store to the point of delivery or pickup. Recently, as a director, I've been orienting myself more towards our enterprise customers, so notably our retailers and brands who essentially want to up their own e-commerce by using Instacart technology selectively. This has been a major growth area for us as we see that retailers are interested in making their own investments in the digital space.
Great. And we have seen Instacart evolve its focus from primarily grocery delivery for consumers to now offering software to grocery retailers. And last year you launched Instacart Platform, which offers new fulfillment, advertising, and insights capabilities for retailers. Can you share how did Instacart decide to move into this direction?
Yeah, of course. So Instacart was founded to bring grocery shopping online. So at the time, consumers were used to getting everything from shoes to music delivered with the touch of a button by one of our competitors. But grocery shopping was largely offline. This is where the Instacart app came to play. And effectively, we became the first company to make online grocery shopping accessible from grocery stores that consumers have a relationship with and love and trust. As part of that sort of initial vision and the product market fit we were able to drive 10 years ago upon Instacart's founding, we realized that it was important, and I would say this is where the platform came to be, where we are now supporting grocers in their vision to go online in an omni-channel fashion, that we realized we needed to put our grocery retailers first. We're now thinking way beyond the Instacart app so that we can introduce essentially e-commerce capabilities to the physical store. We've done this through a number of different ways. We've introduced what we're calling, or what is known as caper carts. So these are carts that basically allow consumers to place items in their shopping cart and have the cart recognize what they've put in the cart so that they can basically check out from the cart directly. That type of engagement with the consumer is one that we want to have across every single grocery transaction in the world, starting with North America. I think the caper cart is a good example of this, but we actually see no bounds to this vision. We're also bringing what we're calling carrot tags, so basically electronic shelf labels to the store, as well as essentially new ways for our shoppers, so the shoppers who are fulfilling grocery orders, to interact with technology within the context of the pick, to bring the store to the customer through AI and through photographic images.
It's great to see how you're evolving your product offerings based on what's happening in the retail landscape. As you introduce these new features and products, are there any challenges that this presented, and how did you tackle them?
Love that question. So I think a natural challenge that we see when we deploy new products to market is general alignment across the entities that we partner with from the retailer side. As you can imagine, with any 0 to 1 project, I largely work on 0 to 1 projects engaged with retailers or brands. There's going to be a way that retailers and brands have done something for years, and people are going to be laser focused on their past approaches, and finding ways to create buy-in on pilots has been, I would say, a really important mitigation to folks having concerns about big change. And I think this is where Instacart has really differentiated ourselves, because we work very closely with a number of strategic grocers to ensure that we're basically in lockstep with them as we explore new ways to innovate in the space. A good example of this could be, frankly, with a partner called Wegmans, where we effectively powered all of the technology behind their Astor Place launch, which was a major New York City launch last year. And what we were able to do is, over the course of a year and a half, come up with a roadmap co-jointly with them, so that we were effectively working with them day in, day out to understand exactly what the layout of the store might look like and what their comfort level might be in an urban environment where there's no parking. We basically need to fill groceries on bikes and scooters.
Great. And as a leader in product management, what has been the most exciting product initiative that you've worked on to help improve the shopper experience? Can you speak to this and talk us through the process from idea to launch?
Yes, happy to do that. And I'm going to get into a very specific grocery example. I'm going to try to bring it to life for you. Today, a major issue that we see is how to shop for weighted produce. And I think the most canonical example of this in the field relates to bananas. Today, and if you scroll Twitter, I should say X, you will see examples of people who have wanted to buy a single bunch of bananas with 5 unique bananas, and they end up with 5 bunches of bananas. This is just a comedy of errors that we see time and time again. And it's something that we've struggled with. It's something that all of our peer groups struggle with. And over the course of my tenure at Instacart, I became very focused on resolving this banana problem. And naturally, in the universe of weights and measures, you may not realize is highly regulated. A fun fact is that most state departments have a weights and measures division responsible for effectively auditing the performance of grocers on weighing and charging customers correctly for weighted items. And my team effectively took this problem associated to how we can improve the customer experience when it comes to basically getting exactly what they want, but also ensuring that on the shopper side, when they're translating the desires of the customer to what's in the store, we're able to, 1, identify the correct items, and then 2, charge the customer correctly for what they're getting. And we did this through a very kind of, I think, interesting methodology. So out the gate, we realized that the job of a shopper in the store is really to identify product and pick product. And that they're not also very good, or they're moving too fast to do proper data entry. What we introduced is a receipt scanning experience. So after the bananas are properly located, we effectively have allowed shoppers to take photographs of a receipt, and then we're using OCR behind the scenes to extract the weight of the product that was purchased and charge the customer correctly. And this, I think, is a really good example. We'll talk about ML undoubtedly a little bit later, but a great example of how we're using technology to make a shopper in the store's experience way more seamless and also delight our customers as they get the correct amount of bananas and don't need to make an ungodly amount of banana bread, which I have also been in that position before. It's not very fun.
I love how specific this example is with the bananas.
This is an error that we often call like a lol sob problem, where we want to laugh, but it's just really cringy. And I think it ultimately hurts trust in our service. And that's why we've taken it very seriously.
Got it. And how did you identify this being an issue in the first place that you wanted to solve?
Great question. And I think this kind of ties to how we do product development at Instacart from a base principle perspective. We tend to be extremely focused on essentially collecting feedback from our shoppers, looking at data pertaining to growth opportunities, looking at data pertaining to unnecessary cost in the system, whether that be inefficiencies related to how shoppers are moving in the physical world, or whether it relates to how we're appeasing customers. So there is like a very analytical lens that we apply in the genesis of any product process. And in the case of the banana problem, this really came from customer data. We look at customer data often. We also look at shopper data often. And what I would say is that often some of our best ideas come from our customers directly. And I think those tend to be the ones that are best received too and drive the most impact.
With the pandemic being more or less behind us, how have you seen consumer behavior changing, and how is Instacart adapting to that changing behavior?
What we're seeing, especially with recent inflation, is a desire to be more price conscious with lower cost solutions like curbside pickup and alternative payments like Snap, as well as a desire to have more choice in delivery speed. So we offer, on the more expensive side of the house, priority delivery, which is the use case of like, I need this chapstick in a pinch. We also offer no rush delivery, where we're essentially giving money back to our customers in order that they're happy to receive tomorrow or the day later. What we're generally juggling is a desire to give customers flexible options, but also ways to find value in those options, whether it be, as I mentioned at the gate, these lower cost offerings, whether Snap or curbside pickup, but also everyday savings like they might get through a loyalty program. So this is an area that we're laser focused on, just in terms of ensuring that we can be more affordable and increase our reach to customers that may not have considered Instacart otherwise.
In addition to these lower cost options, you recently spoke with Progressive Grocer about how customers want grocers to provide the same convenience and personalization that they find online. What are the biggest challenges to actually implementing this?
Thanks for asking that too. So taking a step back, if we look at the grocery landscape today, only 12% of grocery shopping is online, which means that a staggering 88% is done directly in the store. We realized very quickly that if our goal is to touch every single grocery transaction, going back to the conversation we were having on the Instacart platform, that if we aren't present in the store, we're leaving a large share of that market off the table. What we've effectively been doing is a set of investments to introduce technology to the brick and mortar space. As I mentioned, we're doing this with a combination of our Caper Carts, which was this acquisition that we did a couple of years ago. It's also through this AI optimized cart that's weights and measures validated that we are able to create basically a really powerful experience for customers who don't want to engage with a traditional point of sale and also want a more interactive shopping experience where they can be learning about the products that they're putting in their cart directly at their fingertips through a tablet. And we've also introduced technology to power a number of different other types of general offerings. I'd mentioned carrot tags, which are the electronic shelf labels that give customers visibility into basically real-time pricing in the store. And I think that these are just a few ways in which we're bringing technology into the brick and mortar context to make that experience way more personalized to a given customer.
You touched on the AI optimized cart. I'd love to dig into that a little more and understand how Instacart is thinking about and approaching AI.
Yeah, we're incredibly excited about the rise of generative AI. And it's worth noting that it isn't our first foray in machine learning and artificial intelligence. These types of solutions are already deeply embedded into everything we do today. These technologies allow us to solve the complex challenges in grocery that come with integrating with thousands of retailers' catalogs that have tens of thousands of SKUs. It also has allowed us to improve the way in which we generate search results, as well as provide great replacements to our customers. And in addition to that, it helps us optimize how we actually send an order to a store and associate that to a shopper to minimize our fulfillment cost. As we think about the future of AI, we actually see opportunities to reinvent the consumer shopping experience. So it's about effectively creating a ecosystem where we're removing the cognitive load around actually understanding what could be for dinner and generating results that actually appeal to customers' taste, past orders, and allows them to basically live a much more efficient life in that decisioning. It might also apply to the way in which consumers interact with our shoppers in the store, where you can imagine that engaging with effectively like a carrot bot can help our shoppers eliminate the cognitive load of having to speak with a customer. So they're able to do their job way better while also delighting the customer because this sort of entity already has memory associated to past behaviors that the customer has demonstrated on our platform. So generally, lots of excitement in the space. And you have undoubtedly seen that we're already doing a lot with OpenAI in the space. We have a deep partnership with them, and we're excited to continue to be cutting edge.
That's great. And maybe on the flip side, there's a lot of exciting AI innovations happening, but have you been disappointed by any AI features or capabilities?
That's also a really good question. So this is obviously very early days. And what I would say is that in some cases, generative AI has outpaced the product thinking and the consumer. And the consumer and the products are really catching up. I wouldn't say that there are any disappointments. The way that I always think about disappointments in product is it's an opportunity to learn and to make the experience better for our customers over time. Where maybe I can pull from an example is we often, in the universe of machine learning, have to make some really hard decisions. And I think an example in the early days of my time at Instacart related to creating basically an optimal function around what store to batch a shopper to. And we had a really difficult experiment result where we were seeing major quality gains by sending shoppers a little bit further away to a store with more inventory. And we ran into just a really hard time working through the trade-offs of order quality versus the cost of having our shoppers go a little bit further. Those are the types of, I think, moments of decision paralysis that I always think to as being really hard and a really hard part of the PM job. And I'd love to say that this gets easier, but even with generative AI, it doesn't. We're constantly thinking about these trade-offs.
How do you think about Instacart's relationship with grocers, especially as larger enterprises are starting to build out their own capabilities?
Yes, so this is a question that is near and dear to my heart as I work predominantly with grocers on a business line called Fulfillment as a Service, where we are basically creating modular fulfillment solutions so that if retailers want to own their own storefront and own e-commerce, we can actually fulfill the groceries on their behalf. And what I'll say generally is that we are in the business of enabling and empowering our grocers. Many people know us for the consumer app, our Instacart.com marketplace, since that's how they interact with us, but we're actually way, way more than that. We're a grocery technology company that is essentially behind the scenes for a lot of our partners. If you think about the Costco's of the world or the Wegmans of the world, when you go to those proprietary sites, you're actually engaging with Instacart. And generally what we're thinking about is ways in which we can continue to make our technology solutions more modular and flexible so that grocers can pick and choose what works for them and implement the solutions how they want. So some very large grocers will want to build a lot of their own proprietary tech. And we actually are very optimistic and positive about that because we believe that it is in our best interest to be in lockstep with our partners. And we want to enable them by creating integrations in areas where they aren't making investments. I think just generally, this is an area where we're approaching this with eyes wide open and we want to be part of the narrative.
I'd love to shift to speaking a little bit more about the PM role and your career path.
Great.
What's an aspect about the role of PM that people don't think about?
I would say that product management, especially in the last few years, has a lot of sparkle and glitter associated to it. And I do think that this is where one can maybe get overly focused on effectively being very visible, driving strategy, setting the cadence for how to operate, really being in the limelight. But I think an area that folks who are PMs or interested in being a PM don't necessarily spend as much time on is how they can be basically empowering others to serve those roles and essentially be in a little bit more of a servant leadership type mentality. One of the things that I've had to learn over the last few years is how can I essentially maybe behind the scenes be thinking about the strategy, obviously, and then how I want that strategy to unfold, but then empower others to actually see it through. And I think if you can get that piece right, you're in excellent shape because you're able to really increase velocity and also scale yourself and do it while giving others a chance to shine and take credit for the work that is unfolding.
That might be a nice segue to my next question. If you had to share maybe 3 essential traits of a successful PM, what would you say those traits are?
The 3 traits that I think tend to lend themselves well to a great PM are long-term thinking. So being able to anticipate what is going to happen in market and be able to think a few turns ahead when it comes to roadmap creation and strategy creation. The second relates to communication. I think it is very rare that someone who isn't able to communicate nuance when it comes to decisioning will be a highly performant PM. I would put like a lot of onus on communication as a critical trait. And then finally, I would say that smart people will disagree on this one, but I do think having emotional intelligence and being to understand the general tenor of a project and what's worrying a group so that you can effectively influence the culture and get various projects that may be off the rails back on track is critical. Being able to read the room is, in my mind, table stakes to being successful. So yeah, just to summarize that, I would say long-term strategic thinking, communication, deep empathy.
For you personally, how did you decide on this career path and role? Did you always know that you wanted to work in tech?
No, I didn't know that I wanted to work in tech is the short answer. I think I actually fell into product a little bit by mistake. If I dial back the clock to right before business school, I was operating as a product manager at a large retailer. And at the time, I was running the online personal shopping program for that retailer, Sears and Kmart, under the auspices of ESL Investment, which was a hedge fund that owned the company and was looking to create a digital turnaround. As I applied to MBA programs, I was actually dead set on being the CEO of Estee Lauder. I know that the Lauders have some deep roots at Wharton. And actually, my whole pitch going into business school was that I was going to head a CPG brand. And ultimately, when I got to business school, I had applied to an Estee Lauder internship. I didn't get it. And after that point, I thought back to what made me most happy and what I had enjoyed in my career to date. It often takes a step back to have those realizations. And what I realized excited me the most is that I wanted to be in an environment where I was creating digital products based on consumer data. And I think that general circularity of the product development process and the rapid pace at which you could accomplish it within technology really drew me to the product role ultimately.
A lot of people, MBA students or not, are looking to break into tech and especially the PM role. Do you have any advice for these folks?
Yes. My recommendation for MBAs looking to break into tech is that you should be very systematic and also realistic about how you target companies. So everyone with an MBA will have some type of background. They're coming from banking, they're coming from consulting, they're coming from retail, et cetera, et cetera. And with that experience, you actually have an area that you're going to spike in. So if you're coming from consulting, you'll likely be really strong on frameworks. If you're coming from banking, you have a deep understanding of financial systems. If I were thinking about MBAs looking to break into tech today, I would just really be thoughtful about the skills that you bring to the table and then target companies that would benefit from those skills. And even if it means not going to your dream company out the gate, if you can start to apply the things that you already know into the technology sphere, that will likely help you get into the right seat if it's product or whatever you might be targeting, and then eventually get into the right type of company that you're super jazzed about.
We'd love to move on to the rapid fire portion of our podcast. What was the best piece of advice you've received so far in your career?
Great question. You are enough. So entering the tech industry, I think folks can undersell themselves and feel like they're not the smartest person in the room. And I've often found that that type of mentality just doesn't allow you to reach the full fruition of your abilities.
If you weren't in tech, what industry or role would you be in?
I'd be a photographer. I am an avid photographer when I'm not working, and it's been one of the ways in which I feel closest to nature and to my family.
And what was the most impactful class that you took during your MBA?
I took a class called Startup Garage, which was essentially a course focused on standing up your own business. And that was really helpful for product because a lot of design thinking that we deployed, I use all the time in my day-to-day to validate ideas, test, learn, iterate. I'm sure you have something like this at Wharton. I can't recommend it enough.
Yes, we have a class called Innovation. There's also an entrepreneurship class for anyone at Wharton. And last but not least, what's your bold prediction in how you see Instacart continuing to evolve in the next 5 to 10 years?
Instacart started by bringing grocery online through the Instacart app, and then we started helping retailers build their own e-commerce storefronts and fulfillment technology through our fulfillment as a service platform. Naturally, after that, we introduced Instacart Platform to bring this technology within the stores. As we think about the future, I generally think that we've been focused on lessening the physical burden of grocery shopping to date. And ideally in the future, we're also focused on reducing the mental burden so that customers can effortlessly shop for groceries. And in the grand scheme of things, I see Instacart as being a household name, ubiquitous in the digital and physical worlds. And we're very excited for the opportunity ahead.
Awesome. Well, that wraps up our time for today. Thanks so much, Camille, for joining me, and we look forward to following Instacart's evolution and growth in the future.
Thanks, Stephanie.